you touched a little bit, actually a lot of it, on the challenges in adopting this, AI automation, not just for accountants, but for clients, we have a hard time adapting. And so, it's despite all this progress that we've had with automation and AI, adoption clearly and still isn't very seamless. And, we found that 80% of accountants in the report said that they're just completely overwhelmed by the number of AI and automation tools available. And I can completely understand that. And 62% said they faced integration issues, which human error technically at the end of the day, on both ends. And so also, 25% of teams said that they're just investing in employee training. So the gap wasn't adoption, it was just enablement of the actual products. And so we found that while AI adoption is growing very quickly with the general public, the training and integration still lags behind quite a bit. And I think it's across all industries, not even the accounting. And so clearly you both have a lot of experience with these tools. And what are the biggest barriers you're seeing? Is it, tool overload, integration issues, or just resistance from your staff and your clients? And is there any, how do you help overcome those challenges, whether it's,
I think there's a couple of things going on. So first of all, um, so I'm not a typical accountant in my career progression, but for a typical accountant, you don't spend a lot of time in your university degree learning about software selection and implementation, but that's become a huge part of our job. The role of the CFO is supposed to be the right-hand person to the CEO. So if something happens to the CEO, the CFO can jump in and take over, which means that the CFO needs to have understanding of HR, marketing, IT systems, sales, operations, all those sorts of things. And there's a kind of a trend in the industry to move to a kind of a new role for the CFO as the total asset management role. So you're really there to help oversee all of the assets, human and otherwise, of the organization. I think unfortunately, though, in business school, a lot of times when you're going the accounting route, you're only learning about finance. And so you don't actually understand the rest of an organization. You're not understanding business. A CFO needs to understand business, an accountant needs to understand accounting. But how do you go from being an accountant, understanding accounting with very limited understanding of the rest of the business to being a CFO? It's a very difficult trajectory for most folks. So we have a massive gap in our education system right now, because we're still training accountants as if it's the 1980s. They're still training accountants how to do bookkeeping on desktop software right now in 2025. And so they're coming out of university and they have no clue about any of the tools that we use. They don't understand, they hear talk of AI, but they don't actually use the tools. They don't understand how to use them. They don't understand how to use them correctly. And so it's really left to industry to just deal with the problem. And the CPA programs in both countries that I know of, and I'm sure in other places of the world, are also not jumping in. They're publishing articles about AI in our magazines now, which is incredible. And great. That's not helping us with their training program that does nothing to help support them for the real world. There's no consideration for security uh, or anything else that we have to deal with. And so you've got all of this onus sitting on these business owners who are very busy trying to support companies to now fix this massive training gap that we have in our industry. A lot of people still, like both Canada and the US are seeing massive decreases in CPA enrollment right now, and that's because the idea is that your job as a CPA is to go work at the Big Four and be this cog in this machine and audit. Well, audit is the easiest place to automate, and in all of our areas of accounting. And I've seen tools out there that are starting to work to automate most of the audit work. So that's not where we should be sending people because the industry is changing, but that's what people still think that we do as accountants, and that's just not true. And so there's an education gap in the market from what we actually do. I think what we do is actually pretty cool. I tell my kids this all the time; they don't believe me, but and then with the CPA program and our schools are not supporting them to be in a good position to jump into these roles. So when we have folks coming into companies, I mean, I can't hire someone fresh out of university very easily because I don't have time for the amount of training that they need. I just don't. So I need them to go out there and get trained up somewhere else. And that is going to be either really good training, awesome for me, or very poorly trained, and now I can't really fix the training issue. And so it's always a bit of a 50-50 chance that someone's going to come and be successful in this world because we're doing them a disservice, to be honest with you. And so when it comes to adoption, okay, so Andrea and I have been at this for a while. We're obviously cloud nerds and automation nerds, okay? But if you're not and you're a more traditional type of accountant and now you've got to deal with, okay, this isn't my domain expertise. This is not something that I do on a regular basis. And now I have to be the champion for it and work with the rest of my team who are also not domain expertise and get everyone on board with something that none of us are really comfortable with. It's a hard challenge, right? I was, I guess, blessed or cursed in that all my previous jobs before I became an entrepreneur, I kept getting thrown into software selection implementation projects. Everywhere I went, it was like this curse that I had. And it was like, we're going to change this system. Helina, you're in charge. I was like, why does this keep happening to me? But it was perfect because it made it easy for me to run Entrepreneur. That doesn't happen to most people. And so, now you take folks that have been running their firms for like 20 years and they're like ready to like retire in, 15, 20 years or so, going, okay, I'm going to change my whole way my company works. That's a big deal. So it's the thing though that everyone needs to understand is that just like I said, from an advisory standpoint, our clients are demanding more from us. Our clients are now very often coming to us on cloud, right? So the market is demanding cloud, the market is demanding automation. So it's gone from being a nice to have, this is cool, we were leading the way for our clients, and now the clients are already ahead of a lot of firms now. And so it's going to be difficult for people if they don't get on board with some level of change to be able to service their clients if the market is demanding that we use automation tools. I can't believe it. I have so many clients that come to me now who are using our entire tech stack. I mean, that didn't happen even like 4 years ago. And they're like, yeah, we're using no, 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 no. I'm like, perfect. Okay, we don't have to set anything up. This is awesome. Whereas, 10 years ago, I had to explain every single app and they were all concerned about, well, how much am I paying for this? And you're like, do you want to pay for us to bookkeep manually instead? I don't know. I don't think you do. So it's the adoption is it's gonna there's gonna have to be a certain level of adoption that everyone's gonna have to cope with. We're not sitting around using rotary phones anymore. We all had to adopt with the phone changes. It's just part and I think that it's one of those things, though, that I would urge people if this is something that you're just like, this is not my bag. There are so many people out there that can help you do this. So you could have, someone like Andrea come in and help you with your digital transformation or somebody else that or nominate somebody on your team who's actually really lit up by technology. There's this audit firm that I know very well. We work with a lot of the same clients. And they had a staff member who was like super excited about cloud, but nobody else was. And so they really let him take charge there, start to slowly work through the clients and get them converted, get some help when he needed it, and be that champion because it was exciting for him. And it wasn't exciting for everybody else. And over time, everyone kind of saw the benefits. And it didn't have to be the partners being the experts. It was, leaning into the skill set and the excitement from other people. But yeah, so
I
I
love
guess I
that.
had a
Yeah.
lot to say on adoption. I'm going to pass it over to Andrea.
We love this stuff. We're passionate about this. I love it. Yeah, I would say for adoption, it's still the same a difficult lift as it's been. I think one of the hardest things is with all the online automation and ability to do API and connection, there just still is so many places we can't connect, either because of what Helena was saying, we're not being seen as the CFO that should be involved in HR, technology, project management, operations. We're still being put in this tiny little piece of, well, don't you just get the financial done for the CPA at your end? And I think it's that's what's getting in the way of adoption to a lot of technology is we need to be around the table when you are talking about workflow for your entire company. When you are
Yeah.
talking about integrating everything, who better to be entrusting your most sensitive information than the people who have almost an advanced directive to keep your information safe? I mean, we
Yeah.
as bookkeepers and accountants are taught from day one to say that all we have is trust. All we have with our client is trust. So if they're going to entrust you with the bank account and the sensitive information, that is something we hold so dear to our heart. So why aren't we at the table when it's time to integrate technology and talk about better efficiency processes in the business? We absolutely should be there. So sometimes adoption is not happening because we're just not invited to the room.
Mm.
I think a lot of business owners don't know the capabilities we've had in this industry for business for so long. And maybe it is because their accountant or bookkeeper doesn't have those skills. Maybe they are only getting, baseline. But I mean, I know today it's the same thing for me, Elena. Like my business owners that are coming to me for help, they want more. They're expecting more. And I think that's great that we can show up that way. In order to implement, I think the things that get in the way is maybe this starty stop desire to maybe see it through or
we're just still running into, you might have a lot of intelligence over here. One person might really know how to do the accounting and or integration tool, but they don't really have an intelligence upstream about what's going on in the business,
Yeah.
what's creating the bottleneck, how, how to get that connection, and we don't have access. So again, I think it's a shift of mindset to transparency. Obviously, you still want to have us keep the sensitive data sensitive. And I think if businesses aren't taking enough time to really invest in their organizational charts, the true roles and responsibilities for their team, it becomes
Mhm.
very difficult to figure out what data access people should have.
Yeah.
But if you start at the top, hey, if you lost all of these lower level people, who should have keys to the kingdom to help you get back on track? Your financial people, they're going to be there. They're part of the succession planning. So if you're thinking about, how to structure your business, you really got to think about how the data flows through those structures as well. And if you haven't, I think the tendency is to act like the government and to just compartmentalize all the data. And you see
Mhm.
how efficient they are. Not. So if you are afraid of your data leaking to the wrong people within your own organization, I think that just means you need to take a step back and do a better job of, thinking about how your information should be organized, what people should be doing what, and are you making sure that the financial people are part of these discussions? And I think that gets in the way of implementation a lot more than most business owners would recognize,
Mhm.
because you can't delegate if somebody isn't trusted and has access to take it on. Like you can't just delegate something. So a lot of this, these efficiency tools of data flow, the human that's overseeing it, they got to have the ability to have access to that info. You got to be able to trust them.